My audio's live and you're live and My audio's live and you're live. I'm live. Hi, welcome everyone to Talking D&D episode 62. I am not Thundercat 0420. He is not GMPatchNasty. I am GMPatchNasty. That over there is Dysfunctional Dad. Welcome. Yeah, I don't know which way to point. I'm sorry. He's producing the stream. I just remember not to point again. Welcome in. How are you, DD? We're professionals, folks. Audio is live. Thank you, Thundercat. Yes. He's good. He's just getting back into the streaming and remembering how to do these things. But welcome in. This week we are talking about some new player things. What did we talk about last week, DD?
Yes, I am muted. Here I am. I'm DD. And here we go. Yeah, I'm still figuring all this stuff out. So bear with me just a little bit. We're good. Last week, you and Thundercat talked about, I got it in my notes over here somewhere. Elementals.
Also in the outline. There it is. All the elementals. We got weird. We talked about earth, air, fire, the big bad ones. Covered all the elementals. If you didn't catch that and want to catch it again, you can catch that out where, DD?
You can catch that on YouTube on Dysfunctional D&D. We've got the video of the last live showing last Tuesday, and then you can catch the podcast form on anchor.fm. Also, we're also re-streaming that to Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts. So go ahead and
for them ear potatoes.
Check it out there. We're missing Thundercat this week. He is currently on vacation.
Pause for effect.
There we go. I had to.
For you audio listeners out there, whenever we talk about Thundercat on vacation, we pause for effect, and then a picture right now goes up of Thundercat eating a giant turkey leg because he's a very happy man in Disney. We wish you a very happy Thundercat vacation and a happy birthday to Mrs. Thundercat on vacation.
Yes. All of
I'm
those
waiting
things.
to see.
Amazing. Yeah, right. Yeah, so yes, go ahead.
DD, what are we talking about this week?
So this week, I figured we'd talk about new players since I myself am a new player, and I can't very well come in and act like I know everything that I'm talking about because I don't.
You can try.
I can try. I can attempt it. But no, I thought we'd talk a little bit about new players and my experience as a new player and what people can kind of expect coming in for the first time in D&D.
Okay. Such as?
So, I mean, to start off, I feel like we have to talk a little bit about like the stigma around D&D, right? There's all kinds.
What do you mean?
Well, so a couple of different things. There's all the like bad rap that D&D got a while back about it being satanic and.
So hold on. When you say a while back, you mean the 70s?
Well, the 70s and all the way up till now. Growing up, I'm in the South, guys. So Southern Baptists still talk about that kind of stuff sometimes.
But Satan's cool now. Lil Nas X has proved that.
Yeah,
Satan is cool. You give him a lap dance and everything's fine. That is the way the world works. But yeah, you're not wrong. I mean,
my grandma still gives me a weird look every time I tell her I'm playing D&D.
Well, she might also have that stigma that you're one of those people who lives in your parents' basement who's like 45, has like the worst case of before proactive acne. And, like you're fitting that stereotypical bill. right there with that stigma around your common D&D player, or the third and final stigma, which I would never be, and it's the stigma that kind of kept me away from D&D, is LARPers.
LARPers. So what is so wrong with LARPing? Because for anyone who hasn't like seen this conversation before or listened to this conversation before with us, I have tried to get us to do like LARPing skits before, and Patch is 100% always the first one to veto it. So
yeah, no.
So what is it?
I can't willingly want to dress up in like a vest and chainmail, go out into a fucking huge field and throw a rosin bag and say lightning bolt and maybe pretend that it's a lightning bolt. That's stretching my imagination way too far. And I'm a wrestling fan, so you know I have a certain bendability to my imagination, but that's way too far. That snaps the rubber band.
Too nerdy for you? Is that what it is?
That's way too nerdy. That is the equivalent of like going to a Warhammer shop, painting your minis while you're there after you bought them to play with them later on that night, and staying the whole day at the Warhammer shop. I love you, Vandal, but that's way too nerdy.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing
wrong with it, but that's way too nerdy for me. Like that, I can't do it.
It's not too nerdy for me. I legit want to like check out some LARPing. I've never been there. Like I really just like, I've always been a nerd, but I'm really just starting to explore my nerdy side a little bit. So
yeah, you're letting it fly.
I'm letting it go, and I'm gonna see where the limits are. I would see where that line is. What is too nerdy for me?
Sitting here reading chat. Thundercat's right. We should check out Mazes and Monsters. It's a great movie. It's got Tom Hanks. It's from the 70s. It's about a man who starts to lose his perception of reality and fantasy, and that kind of also helped give D&D a bad rap. And once again, you know, baseball player, best wizard ever, because go home with bruises. Lightning bolt.
Be knocking kids out with that.
But I mean, the stigma of that, it has been kind of like, I don't want to say erased from my brain, because when I think D&D players, I think Matt Mercer, I think Travis Willingham, I think quite possibly the first thing when you say D&D player, I think of Will Wheaton. I think of fucking Wesley Goddamn Crusher from Star Trek The Next Generation, who can't roll a goddamn D20 to save his life. And I mean that in the literal and the figurative sense.
I'm not sure what you're talking about there, but I know the Will Wheaton curse is real.
Yes, that's the Will Wheaton curse. He's actually died because the party split up in an Ack Inc. episode, and then he Will Wheaton diced in an acid trap. So couldn't save his life.
It's rough.
Yep,
dying in an acid trap. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned all those names, and like for me, it's the same way. When I first started like watching other people play D&D, I started seeing like who these people were. Like Matt Mercer, like one of the best voice actors, or at least gotten around more than anybody else I could name off the top of my head. Like
Nolan North.
Pick a video game, and Matt Mercer's probably an NPC in it.
Not wrong.
Like, but yeah, like you don't, like, I feel like a lot of people coming into it have just always thought like, oh, you have to be super nerdy to play it. I mean, and you don't.
You just have to have a little bit of imagination and basic math skills and know how to use a pencil.
Right. And there's calculators now, and even if you don't know how to use it, yeah, all right, yeah, chill the fuck out, gatekeeper.
I mean, it's 18 plus 3. It's not that bad. Hard.
It's not that bad.
You can do it 19, 20, 21. You could do it on your finger. You're fine. You're fine.
Right. For anyone who doesn't have the basic math skills, you can still play.
Yeah,
it's not. Don't consider that a barrier to entry.
Honestly, if like, it's a good way to also get kids into playing D&D if they don't have a good math set. you can get them to have a good math set real quick if they have a vivid imagination, as most children do.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I've seen at a lot of schools picking up D&D clubs, and
Yeah.
the students in those clubs tend to do very well in school because they have an outlet for their imagination, and they can
Now, are you saying on
also.
that on the? Go
What's
on,
that?
keep going. Sorry.
Well, I was just saying they also can apply some basic math skills and use critical thinking on a regular basis outside of the traditional like school environment.
So both on a social and a educational level,
Right.
that D
Yeah.
and D is kind of helping. Okay, good,
Yeah.
good,
Absolutely.
good.
Absolutely. Yeah. I
All right.
think.
So stigma's been burned. There's really not a stigma to D&D anymore, and like get over it. Like if you want to find something satanic in something, all you got to do is really look for that type of shit, and you'll find it because you're trying to find something. You can make something sound satanic if you want it to sound satanic, so you don't have to play it, and that's like if you want it to be your hangup.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like anybody who's like looking for that sort of thing in it is really reaching for a lot of things, and we'll just
Mhm.
leave it at that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, what else would you say would you consider like a barrier for new people coming in? What would you say is the hardest part about getting started in D&D?
That's a very good question. It's the first thing that you would need to play D&D. People.
Hmm.
That is the hardest thing. That is the biggest uh bubble popper to play D&D is people. A, people who want to play D&D. B, people who want to be inclusive with their D&D. And C, a dungeon master. Someone who wants to divulge the time and effort it takes to be a dungeon master for a weekly session.
Right. So, all right, let's back up a little bit. How would you go about finding people to play with? What are some
Um,
ways to
well,
do that?
first, I would go into the weekly chats for the War for Garaxia, the Fight for the Forest, and Talking D&D found on this channel, twitch.tv/dysfunctionalttv. Also, youtube.com /dysfunctionalDND. If you found a squid, you're in the right place. Once again, I thank you for being over the age of 18, you fucking animals. Uh, Two, the internet. Ask your friends. Hey, have you ever played D&D? If they call you a fucking nerd, then I mean, get over it. They're your friends. Sometimes they're gonna be stupid. They'll want to play D&D eventually. Um, Discords have really kind of opened my eyes to what D&D could potentially be with a good Discord. With the right people who want to play D&D. That's the thing. You got to find people who want to teach, people who don't mind like refreshing people the rules every now and then. Um, that's the hardest resource that you'll find
Yeah.
is finding someone who wants to teach you how to play D&D.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like I mean there's a lot of places have local game stores that have community groups that there's always people looking for games of D&D. Um but you also have to kind of be careful with that because there are a handful of what I call gatekeepers out there. Just people who are so I kind of feel like they're the people who are so hung up on doing it their way, like playing the game their way, that they refuse to let anybody enjoy the game a different way at all. And so that can kind of be intimidating, I guess, for some new people coming in, like not being able to, like, if somebody tells you these are the rules, this is exactly how you have to play it, and you can't change anything about this, and this, like, that's not, to me, that's not what D&D is. I mean, I know D&D has a set of rules, but uh
Well, so here's the thing, DD. I will say from a DM's point, restrictions are a thing that will happen, but I will agree. Like if you've got a DM who's not gonna flow like with story and like role play elements with you, that's like or a player who doesn't want to fucking flow with like the yes and type of things. It's not a good D&D player in my book. Like that's someone who's set in their ways.
Right. Yeah, I mean, so I guess where that comes from for me, you know, I have seen people. So in particular, I saw a post on Twitter yesterday, and this kind of like skips down our notes here a
Uh-oh.
little ways. But I saw I
We're going
saw
on to Twitter.
I saw a post on Twitter where someone basically was asking other people on Twitter about barbarians, and they mentioned that uh, they use a barbarian, but they don't like using uh, the term rage for that mechanic. And so they asked other
What do
people if they feel the same way and what they called that particular mechanic. And a lot of people came in and said they called it focus or something along those lines. And like to me, all you're doing is really changing the flavor there. Right? You're just kind of adding your own flair to it. But it's the same mechanic. But there were at least 15, 20 different people commenting on there talking about how that's not D&D and that's not how you play the game. And that bothers me. And
So
like
I'll be real, as someone who's watched most of season 1 of Vox Machina and like Critical Role, fan bases suck. They really do. Like I love when people love content that's being put out, but I hate when people go out of their way to be like, "Yo, your content's like this is not how you should be playing the game." It's first of all, you're going out of your way to like to be negative. First of all, that's you're come on now.
right.
Save your time. Save
Right.
your time and energy for some a better outlet. Two, like be happy that you're watching people play D&D because that would have never happened when I was a kid. Like that type of shit that like that's like recreational marijuana. Like federally legal, like that type, like it's like Jetsons flying cars. Like those are the things that I dreamed of when I was a child. Like the flying car, I can go into a 7-Eleven, get a beer, a pizza, and a pack of joints, and then I can sit down and watch D&D potentially or whatever the hell I want on the internet. But like it's the same thing. It's you go into any element, you're gonna have those type of people. That's where people can suck. And it's very risky to play D&D with people you don't know. Thundercat and I will attest to this. You could potentially get a murder hobo in a session full of like role players. Like they're gonna clash. People have different opinions on certain things. That's okay until it starts to ruin the fun of D&D, because then that's where it gets hard to want to keep playing D&D, you know?
Right.
Like,
So
but yeah,
we'll
finding
circle
good players.
we'll circle back
Find
to
good
that
players.
because that is actually a good point that I wanted to bring up down the line too. But we'll circle back to that about ruining the fun and um how to prevent that from happening. But yeah, finding good players.
I wasn't talking about our fans, Thundercat. I'm talking about the hardcore D&D fans that like to go out of their way and shit on other people's fun with D&D because they're fucking rules lawyers, Nazis.
All
Those
right.
type of people.
Well, and
Sorry.
I understand the rules, and there's always going to be restrictions, and that like that's part of the game. Like that's part of what makes it a game is that there are a set of rules that you have to follow. But if you're using the same mechanic, then what's the harm in changing the name of that mechanic?
There's no harm. There is
Exactly.
absolutely no harm in changing like the way something looks or the way something is pronounced. Like, you can call your rage whatever the hell you want, as long as it boils down to the fact that
Rajay.
you have resistance against certain damages. You have the plus in attacks. Like, there's nothing else that's not on that little block. You can call it whatever. You could call it pickles. All right, I get so mad. I start seeing green, and I pickle, and then boom, your resistance and your attack damage. Boom.
Right.
I don't.
Yeah.
That's one of those things that's never gonna bother me. Whatever you wanna, like, however you wanna put your spin on it, that's perfectly fine, as long as it doesn't break the ruling of what it does. I don't give a shit. It's yours. It's your rage. If you want to call it your pickle and you turn, like, you see green and all of a sudden, like, you got these small, like, vinegar, like, boils on you, cool. Do they do any damage when they pop? No. Why would they? They don't. Like, you don't get that from your pickle, your rage. That doesn't happen. I think it looks cool. I'm not going to let it do damage.
Right. Yeah.
That breaks another topic that we're going to be covering later on. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I only bring that up to like mention that as, like, that's almost like a barrier to entry for some people, I guess, as new players. Like, I know I've seen on TVs, and when you look in the internet, there's all kinds of shit out there. But, like, you run into a lot of people out there who just feel like you can't, they're going to be the rules lawyers, which is fine if you're a rules lawyer, by all means. But understand, like, this is a game that you use your imagination to play out in your own head. So if you're not going to let somebody use their imagination, then what's the point of the fucking game?
Mm-hmm.
Like, chill out, understand the difference between flavor and a mechanic, and just let people play the game they want to. And even if they want to change the mechanic, then it's just called homebrew at that point. I mean, you're
They can try. They can certainly. They can talk to the DM if they want to try and change the mechanic.
That's a DM decision. That's a DM decision. If a mechanic is changed, that's 100% a DM decision. But I mean, you look at Critical Role. Their entire Vox Machina campaign was based off of a combination of mechanics from D&D and Pathfinder.
Mm-hmm.
And they did a wonderful job of blending those mechanics into one game. And I mean, it's still based off of D&D Pathfinder. It's still the game. It's still the game that we're all playing here. So,
and I'm going to say this right now. They've been playing for a very long time. They have a firm grasp of the rules, but as everyone does in the heat of the moment, they will forget rules. It's okay. It's their game.
Yeah.
Don't blast them on the internet because, they can't do this and they can't do that with that level spell. Yada, yada, yada. Or you forgot that this person had this. Get over it. And just watch their D&D.
And you're telling a story anyway. I mean, like, let them tell their story. If Matt Mercer does, I think, a fantastic job of knowing when to let a rule slide. Like, I was watching, I think it was like episode 23 or something of their first campaign, that Vox Machina one, yesterday. And it is where Keyleth is going to the fire tribe, and she fights a fire elemental, and she becomes a water elemental.
Mm-hmm.
And the fire elemental, one of their traits is when they hit you with melee, you catch on fire.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're a water elemental, why on earth would you catch on fire?
Because it's magic.
Because it's magic, but you're also a magic water elemental.
That is one of those. That's the DM ruling on a fly.
Right. So the ruling that he made was that Keyleth did not catch on fire. A water elemental would not catch on fire from a fire elemental.
Mm-mm.
He was
That's the right ruling.
Mid-session, he's like reading the rules. He was like, "You would catch on fire." He's like, "No, fuck it. This doesn't make sense. You don't catch on fire." So he deliberately broke the rule for the sake of the story. Which
that's rule of cool. That's the rule of number one when it comes to D&D. Like, if you want to try to do something cool, your DM should go, you could certainly try, and then make you roll a die. If there's no way possible that you could do it, then I'd be like, no, you can't do that. You could try to do something else, and then work with you on something that would be cool. But, like, let's say you want to punch through an iron door. No, you can't do that.
Right.
Could you try and scale down a tower that has these fancy drapes? It's gonna be hard, but you could certainly try.
Could you try to scale up a glass tower? Probably not.
You can try.
You can try.
You can certainly try. That's what I just. All right.
Check out the Fight for the Forest to find out 2 weeks from now, or
The answer is no. The answer is going to be no.
2 Saturdays from now.
Yeah, no, it's no. All right, DD, you're playing D&D. You're in a group full of wonderful people that you've met online via the internet through Twitch and Twitter and Discord, like Thundercat, myself, Vandal, my lovely future wife. What do you need to play D&D? What are the basics?
You need character.
Well, let's start off even more basic.
Even more basic.
Yep.
You need either a pen and paper or some sort of notepad. All of my stuff is digital. So.
Yes, everything is digital nowadays, but baseline, you need a pencil and a paper. That's all you need.
Yeah.
You don't need a character sheet.
I do take physical notes. We didn't forget Tater. No one forgot Tater. Tater's in the group.
I'm sorry, Tater. This is Tater.
This is a
Tater is also a new player.
A hypothetical Tater.
If Tater was in the chat, I would ask him what he would bring to this wonderful game of D&D that he's joined you, me, Vandal, my future wife, and this weird guy who used to have a mustache and now doesn't have a man bun. Go on.
I'm not that weird.
You've had a lot of hair evolutions since we started streaming. Yeah.
Yo.
You and I are like on the same level when it comes to hair evolutions. Ours changed. Thunder's just goes away. Vandals, I can't put a tag on that. And then Tater got bald, and now he's beautiful. He's always staying that way. Like if he gets hair again, it's gonna look weird. Like, who are you? Right, okay, I know you.
Bald and beautiful forever.
Yeah. He's that BBE, big bald beautiful energy. Triple
big bald beautiful. Yep. Yeah, so pen and paper for taking notes. Some sort of either digital or paper character sheet, like, which you can get online, like in a lot of different places now. Dice. 7 dice. 7 die.
A set of dice. A set of dice. 7 polyhedral dice.
Dices, yes.
You would need a D20, a D12, a D8, a D6, a D4, and 2 D10, preferably percentage dice. If you cannot get percentage dice, get 2 different colored D10s. As much as that is unpleasing to the eyes and you have a weird looking set of dice, typically, most sets now, you can buy the whole set and it's pleasing to the eye, and then you have 1 set of dice. You don't have to worry about those things. You don't have that weird looking fucker.
Right. Yeah, I've got 3 sets of dice. They all came with a percentage die, which I have yet to use in a game.
You need to be a cleric. Be a cleric, really.
Yeah.
Or a sorcerer. Those are the two times like you need a percentage dice, or looting. If you loot,
Yeah.
loot hordes, that's when you'll typically roll your percentage dice. And then everything else, if you don't have other dice and you just have a die, you should have a d20.
Yeah.
Because if you bring a dice, someone's gonna go, "Where's the rest of your dice?" And you're not gonna have an answer, because I wouldn't have an answer for that, because I only have one die. And I would give you a set of dice because I have many and you have one dice and not a set, which is confusing. I don't know what that rant was about. I've never
dice versus die versus dices.
I really honestly, like, if people come with no dice, that makes sense. If people come with a set of dice, that makes sense. If someone comes with like a D8, I don't know what.
Where'd you get a D8 from? I can imagine somebody coming with a D6, because like those.
Yeah, like, or 5 of them. Like, yeah, all right, I'm ready to play D&D. I got my dice, and then
Yahtzee. Yep.
Like, that's I if I was playing in his group, I'd be like, can we accept that as the first natural 20 and get this man a real set of dice?
Right. Yeah, you roll a Yahtzee with that then.
Yeah.
Well, so my characters are rogue, so I almost need 5d6. I need 3 3d6 right now.
Just wait until you're rolling like 7.
Yeah, right.
You'll need a little tray for your D6.
Oh, yeah,
and you just go.
Yeah. I'm currently shopping around for a tray, which leads me to another, I guess, barrier for entry. Like, I know I mentioned like game shops and stuff before, and I found like 2 game shops in town that have D&D groups, but they don't sell D&D accessories. And it can't wrap my mind around it.
I have a question.
Yes.
When you say D&D accessories, what do you mean? Because that is a very broad topic, because I can use fucking anything as a D&D accessory. So, do they sell dice?
No.
Do they sell pencils?
No.
Fuck you. All right, I'm done with this place. I don't even want to play D&D there. You don't sell a pencil or dice and you have D&D and you're...
I'm swinging by another shop tomorrow that hopefully will be the winner, because their website says that they do in fact sell dice sets, dice trays, dice paraphernalia and whatnot, dice towers.
Buy a new pair of sneakers, DD, and get a new dice tray that way.
I'm looking for something. I'm looking for something like nice. Like, I want it to be like.
Oh, you want a
specialized tray for dice, and potentially storage as well. Because right now I've got 3 sets of dice that all just live in little baggies.
Well, see, here's the issue.
Just the little drug baggies.
You need to get yourself you go buy yourself a bottle of Crown Royal. Because the best thing about Crown Royal is
big, wide.
You get, for $20, you buy the dice bag that comes with a bottle of booze. Yeah, see?
There it is.
$20 dice bag and a bottle of booze. Yeah, buddy.
Hell yeah.
What does CR stand for? Critical Role. And it's purple and gold. Can't go wrong with that.
Yeah, and there you go. Critical Role. I thought you were answering a chat question for a second. Did somebody ask that in chat?
No,
Crown Royal.
I was
Crown Royal. Yeah.
Yep, Crown Royal. Yep. It flexes your imagination there for like what's the CR stand for? And then just make something up different every time.
Right.
Yep.
Cool. So like, that's a few things that you need. You'll build supplies up over time. I started with 1 set of dice and a pin and digital assets, but now I've got 3 sets of dice, and like I said, I'm going shopping for a specific rolling tray. Well, Patch shakes his head.
First of all, one, go to your comic book shop. What you really need to do is go to like a local trade fair, like a farmer's market type of deal, and see if you've got any woodworkers down there. Because that's where you'll find something you can be like, hey, I'll give you X amount of dollars if you can make something cool that looks like this.
Yeah.
Because that's what there was dude down at Pepperell Lobby. Anyway, I used to walk in and out of there, and they were setting up in the morning when I would work overnights. And I walked by this dude, and he would had like chainmail and shit. And I was like, dude, do you make chainmail? He's like, yeah. I was like, do you ever make like D&D stuff? He's like, all the time. Just gave me his card, and like he showed me like 2 chainmail dice bags, and then this ridiculous like knight tower. So it's a dice tower that starts off metal for the knight's helmet, and then it's like metal rivets on the inside of wooden. So it makes the coolest fucking sound. And I asked him how much he wanted for it, and it was not a figure that was in a ballpark that I was willing to pay for. It was 4 digits, so no thank you. Yeah. The noise it made was worth maybe the lower end of 3 digits, because it was a really unique noise.
Yeah.
It's up there with my Oogie Boogie dice worth of noise. Have you seen Nightmare Before Christmas?
I have. What are
I
your
have those dice.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Snake eyes. Those I have those dice.
All
They
right.
make a super cool, satisfying noise. I used them when I was a monk, and they're still one of my favorite pairs of dice, but it's not a whole set.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yep.
Cool.
You have all your resources to play.
Got all the resources. So now where can you find information? Like if you've got questions along the way.
So everywhere you can go online, there is the SRD, which is the standard reference document. It gives you one from each class, and that's for players. Like you can be a berserker barbarian, you can be a life cleric, you can be a thief rogue, you can be a hunter ranger. You don't get a lot of options, but you get free options. Thank you, COVID, for that. So D&D gave everyone a free adventure and the tools to play said adventure and make a character. If you want to get more and not have to pay for it, you can probably find websites online. There are several that I use that I also like to support via Patreon, because they do a lot of things for other virtual tabletop systems, so that you can integrate it and not have to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on books that you already have and put them into a digital form. But for base level, you can find adventures. Go to DM's Guild, go to Players Guild. You can get just about anything online for a menial price tag, or pay what you want.
Yeah. And so I use in game a lot 5e tools. So I'll use that. It's absolutely free, and any kind
Cluttered
of
with ads.
Yeah, it adds all over the place, but it's super helpful tool if you're looking for, hey, I don't remember what this spell does, or what's my melee range, what's my movement speed. You can look all of that up in a second. You should have most of that written down on your player sheet, but
yeah,
if it's not there, if you're not sure what that spell specifically does, I know on my player sheet it is all written in shorthand. So when it comes time to cast a new spell that I've written down, I'll read my shorthand and think, what the hell does any of this mean? And then I'll pull up 5e tools and I'll read the spell word for word.
So before I had 5e tools and I had the book, you'd write the page number that the spell's on. Like comprehend languages, page 286.
Yeah.
Because I'm not writing what comprehend does. Like even the cards, like they'll have like a blurb. They don't, for longer spells, they can't put it all on there, so they'll have you reference a page. Spells are probably the one that you're going to have to reference and come back to a lot, no matter what type of character you are. I'm going to say level 3, you'll probably start to learn most of your character options at that point. Like your movement, your basic attacks, your bread and butter for your class options by that point.
Right.
Or 5.
D&D Beyond is another great resource. They've got all kinds of articles and stuff directly geared towards new players, just to kind of give you some basic principles to get started with the game. So that's an awesome resource there. Yeah, so what classes are going to be the easiest to get into as a new player? I know we mentioned it. You guys have mentioned it several times before on here. Fighters.
I'm gonna be honest with you. It depends on the person first. If you are brand new, absolutely zero experience, as they would say in the wrestling business, greener than goose shit, and you have no RPG experience whatsoever, I think you should be a champion fighter, and then role play the shit out of it, because you can. That's just getting into a character. For those that have a little bit of experience and like to read a little bit more, you could probably be rogue, cleric, paladin, wizard. If you want to challenge yourself for your first time playing D&D, I would certainly recommend being a warlock, a druid, a sorcerer, or not an alchemist, an artificer. One of the new things from Eberron that I don't know a lot of, but it's kind of funky, and I don't ever want to be one.
It's interesting. I've been reading up on it because I want to make a character build out of it.
Yeah, it's neat, but the thing is, like, my brain goes into that it does what an enchanter can do, and a good enchanter wizard can do. And I would allow, because that's the type of magic that's on magic weapons, is enchantment. Yeah. But artificer is the way to not have to deal with like reading all the spells types and shit like that.
Yeah. Well, and you can do that sort of, I don't know. I haven't read much into like the like enchanting as like a wizard.
See, here's the thing. There's probably not a lot out there, but it's one of those things where, as we'll talk about it probably sooner rather than later, that's where DMs like to homebrew. Like if I'm running, like, so I apologize. Let's take what I'm doing, the whole American Magical Academy thing. That's homebrew. But what that is it's kind of like my module. I have your restrictions. I have the levels that I want you to be when you start and when you end, and then I have my stories to get you from these points and this point through that. The things that I add into that module are homebrew. Like, I'll touch, like, Tomb of Annihilation. That was a module I ran with Vandal and Thundercat and Griff and eventually J-Rock. Not J-Rock, J-Rod, J-Rock. But he made a turtle shell. There's nothing in the game that says like you can make like a turtle shield. So I was like, all right, let's have him roll some dice. Let's have him collect some pieces. And he got to make like a cool magic reflecting turtle carapace shield of reflection or something. I don't remember what it was called, but it was a while ago. But it was one of those things that I set values. He exceeded them. Made it cool for both me and him. That's how you can make any module homebrew without having to make a pantheon of gods, a whole map, a whole slew of NPCs and hierarchies and history, which is one of the things that good DMs will do. And I'd like to say that I'm a good DM, but I am not, because the history thing, I'll I just so much to write. I'll give you blurbs. Don't divulge into more of it. Okay, sure, make a history check. Ah, shit. It's not high enough to get there. Maybe try again in like a couple weeks when I have something written. Um, but that's one of those things that I like to. That's a personal thing on me.
Right.
But you also have to have the player to push me to want to do that. Like if you guys, let's say I had that whole story planned, and you guys stick to that railroad, and not try and like check out the rest stops along the way and like meet an NPC and form a bond and pick up a little article, that makes the DM kind of want to that player wants to do a little bit more. Maybe it'll get the other players to want to do a little bit more, and I'll want to do a little bit. Like you can have players create things for you, like which I've totally love when players are talking about, oh, what could it be? It could be one of these. It could be one of these. And I'm just sitting there like,
that's actually a good idea. Cool.
So I see in your list of topics, DD, there are 3 that we should blend all into one thing that we're going to talk about because they are very, very like.
Okay. And which are those 3?
That would be mechanics, flavor, and terminology.
Okay.
So mechanics and flavor are very, very. We touched on them. Mechanics of the game works. That's how they're going to work. How it looks, that's completely up to you. That what you say to get those things to happen, completely up to you. The flavor, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I mean the mechanics are the rules of the game. The mechanics are how each class does what they do as written by the book.
Raw.
Raw.
Monday Night Raw. Read as written. You read the spell as it is written. That is how the spell works. You touch one creature that is medium in size or smaller. This is a large size creature. The spell does not work.
Right. Yeah.
It's one of those things that sucks. If you were to do the things that I like to do and ask if I'm a 20, since I'm a 20 level wizard, if I can polymorph, if I can dimension door my dragon to the DM before I cast the spell and let the DM rule, then that's where you get into the flavor of a mechanic. That's where the rule of cool can sometimes overwork a mechanic if the situation fits. I've had this happen. I've done this as a player. I've allowed it as a DM. So as a player, let's go into that topic. I've dimension doored me and my gigantic dragon to a town, and I bullshitted a story about Bob who held on to my spell scrolls, and I found the 9th level spell scroll of wish, and I turned Tiamat into chickens and dragons into chickens. That's what happened in the Cluckening.
Wait, hold on. You turn
Tiamat, the mother of the 5-headed queen of dragons, fiend, into chickens. Also, all of them into dragons.
Basically a god, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it is a god.
It is a god, yes. Into chickens.
Mechanics fix things? Sometimes.
Yeah, and sometimes they rip you off.
Yes, they do. But then as a DM, I've had players pull the Specter of Death out of the deck of many things and die to the Avatar of Death. And they didn't die. And that's one of those things that if you die to death, you're dead. You don't come back.
Right.
You are dead. There is.
Right.
But as the DM, I was like, I want him for this part of the story. He's part of the bad guys. He's part of that redemption arc for him. He's part of one of the big bad evil guys that I have at the end, he's gonna want that fucking vengeance. So let's figure out a way we can get him back to kind of overrule that, you know? Because it fit the narrative, and it broke the mechanic, but it kind of worked in a new one.
Right, but I like we said earlier, I feel like if you're breaking the mechanic for the sake of the story, then you can kind of bend the rules a little bit there. That yeah. I mean, you're kind of getting
Right.
into you're kind of getting into homebrew territory at that point. I feel like
A little bit.
a little bit.
Well, see, so as Thundercat says, did not turn Tiamat into chicken. She was banished. All evil dragons were turned into chickens. I could not allow to turn her into a chicken. She's technically not a dragon. However, from my perspective as the player character, I walked into a building and there was a bunch of evil dragons outside and Tiamat, and I wished all of them were chickens. And I walked back outside, Tiamat was gone, and there was a bunch of chickens, so it worked. Tiamat turned into chickens in this break. But when you get into like the real homebrew things, that's when it's like you've made a spell, you've made a class, you've
Right.
made a race. I don't really want to say like adventures aren't homebrew because they are. It's how much is put into that adventure. What I like to classify as homebrew or as a homebrewed module. Like you
Right.
can run anything in Faerun and use that as your backdrop, but it takes a lot more to make an entire world, make an entire pantheon of gods, make an entire, racial history for a race that hasn't even existed in Faerun,
Right. So I mean, I guess to me, I feel like, and I'm the one with the least experience here, talking like I know what I'm talking about. But to me, I feel like homebrew is almost like a spectrum. Like
It is.
it's you've got the one end of the spectrum where you're really not changing much. You're doing the modules, by the book, like per the word, and then you've got the total other end of the spectrum where you're creating the entire thing, and every campaigns falls somewhere in that homebrew spectrum.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Because if you go into any book, it gets you from point A to point B, but it
Everything in the
leaves
middle is up
out.
to you.
Well, yes and no. Like how characters talk, like they can say, like they do go over some NPCs that will be important, but like I remember one that he was a short, stout dwarf, but he was a Duragar, so he was like from the Underdark. He was cross-eyed, and he was a bounty hunter. So like I tried to talk like Peter Falk and do like a Columbo with him, and like, oh, you guys, I know. Okay, this is actually you're over here, and do something like that. Like that little bit of homebrew on there. It's like it's the spectre, the homebrew rainbow, as we could put it, because it doesn't tell you how to talk like the NPCs. They could tell you they talk in a lifting tone, but that could be Matthew McConaughey stoned. That's your little twist on things. And then you have another step another step into homebrew, creating a magical item, which all DMs should do at one point in their DMing career, because it will teach you how to balance your magical items real quickly. Nod. Yes.
Yes.
For audio
Yes.
listeners, DD is nodding. Yes.
Yes.
But the flavor of things, like saying that you rage, you go into like a trance. You don't remember what your rage is, what happens when you rage. Like that's flavored. That sure, I'm gonna hold you to it as your DM.
Right down the line when you're trying to recall something in a group setting and you were raging at the time that it happened, you don't remember you were raging.
Nope, you have no recollection. Why? Well, do you remember that dragon fight? I certainly do, because you took half damage the entire fucking fight. But you know, the flavor of what color is your Eldritch Blast? What you say for a vicious mockery? What your armor looks like? How like the divots on Sal's daggers that I assume, maybe the knot or two that's in his combat knife. You know,
the little spot on his pet mouse's eye. Yeah.
The bits and pieces of banana that's still on Ironhide's old shield because it's crusted on there and it's never coming off.
Yeah, I just imagine there's just like dried food bits all over that shield, and
oh, absolutely, absolutely. Nothing on his chest though, because that's gleaming.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll get that. But like the easiest way for flavor to see like a player's creativity is just do the Matt Mercer thing. How do you want to do this?
How do you want to do this? Yeah.
Yeah.
Let them tell that part of the story. I mean, yeah, if they're the one to you know, pull something off, they're the one to give the final blow.
And if be cheeky, if they're not good at it and like they don't really want to do that, describe their killing blow, ask them where they want to hit them, and then you can describe their killing blow.
Right. Yeah.
I've had that. I've seen players who don't know what the how do you want to do it is, and like you kind of get them into thinking like that when you know, what color is your Eldritch Blast? Like ask them when things are going down. So when you say how do you want to do this, then they kind of get it at that point, you know.
Right. And
my eyes fill with this orangey light as I outstretch my hand and shoot off an Eldritch Blast as it concusses his chest inwards.
And I feel like for like a DM, those are great sorts of questions to ask throughout the campaign to try to get new players involved in it and get them kind of thinking along those lines, and like, hey, this is your world. As much as can be allowed, this is your world. So
what was the first thing I asked everybody on the Saturday night campaign? First thing.
What do you look like? Yeah. Yeah, and I love that. Like that's at the very beginning of it, we have this vague idea of what everybody is, but like at that moment, we're forced to imagine it in our heads and describe it, and that just like is solidifying that character as who that is, and that's solidifying the world as what it is. So I loved that. That's exactly how we started that out.
I feel as though in the medium that we used, since we're on stream, in most D&D games, if you don't know the adventure party that you're starting off with, or you have a vague recollection of them, I will always ask, what do you look like? I want to know basically three things when I ask that question. What I need to know what your face looks like. That's the big one. So I can kind of have like a general picture of your emotion, like if you're sad or if you're happy. What you wear, like, not, is it like pants or shorts or those, like the type of dress, like are you fancy or are you lower class? That's what I'm more curious to know. And then significant things like, do you have tattoos? Do you walk with a limp? Do you have any signifying marks on your armor? Like those type of things that you would stand out in a crowd.
Right.
Oh, I have an itch.
Yeah, I mean, and that kind of stuff I feel like is super important to like think about. Like if you're a new player making a character, like yeah, build your character sheet, but I've got a few different characters like in my head that like before I even think about what class they are, what character they are, or like like what race they are. I'm thinking about their personality and what class and race is going to fit that personality for that character, and then build around that.
When I make a character, I wing it. What haven't I been? What can I be? What can I be? What can I get away with?
Well, yeah. Well, see, I've been two things at this point. So,
Right.
yeah, I've got two characters currently that we're running right now. In yeah, for week 20, week 20 on Warhammer actually. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
It's
We're in
in
double
that
digits. I
ballpark.
can tell you that much.
It's in that
Yeah.
ballpark. And then like week 4 on our Saturday night campaign. So
Well, the difference, DD, between you and me is, one, the experience we've had playing D&D, and
right.
two, I've DM'd. So I've had the outlet for all of these crazy cockamamie personalities just to have as NPCs and not have as player characters.
Right. Yeah.
That's a big difference. I've taken that bold leap and dove into the pool of Dungeon Master and enjoyed it and kept swimming around in it.
See, and yeah, this was going to be for later too, but we might as well get into it. We only got a half hour left anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, like, when is the right time to start DMing? Like, you've been coming. I've only been playing for 20 weeks now, but when this past weekend, I almost came out and said I wanted to try to run a little one shot instead of canceling, because I had an idea that we could run for a single session without messing up the story.
All right. So, one, you understand the concept of one shot. So
Right.
yes, I enjoy that. How? I'll be honest with you, DD. I would love to do that, simply because I know how far I could throw you and see what I could get away with, because I've done it before to Griff, and I know, and Griff had a firmer grasp of the rules, and
Right.
you don't.
So that's where it is. That was kind of what held me back too, was like, I'm not that familiar with the rules for me to be coming in.
I have to cut you off, DD.
Yes.
Because there is a man on vacation, and he's with a lovely Mrs. Thundercat, who it's her birthday, so I'm going to stop you right there.
That guy right there.
What's your favorite thing to happen so far with the Garaxia group?
My favorite thing so far with the Garaxia group, that is a tough one. We've had a lot of really fun moments. Like accidentally sending Ironhide to an abyss. And I think trapping the blacksmith with a bear trap was one of my favorites, because just to end that combat in that way, where like 3 moves ahead, we had set up a bear trap behind him, and then somebody pushed him into it to trap him there, and then being able to basically end that combat with him alive so we could question him was just, I think, the best ending we could have possibly had for that.
I was gonna make sure he was walking away alive, because cleric's gonna be cleric.
Cleric's gonna cleric, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad we got that out of there. What were we talking about before? You were talking about DMing a one shot. Yeah. I know Thundercat would have been all for it. I know Vandal would have been all for it, because he's a DM who's a player who
right. Well, it was this past weekend when DM was, or when Vandal was going to be out anyway, and he wasn't going to be able to DM. So it would have been basically like a guest DM spot, so we could still play. But like I said, ended up one, not being able to write as much of it as I wanted to, because his baby was sick. It was a rough day altogether, so couldn't get that part of it done. So I wasn't confident enough in it to like bring it to the group and say, hey, let's do this. But the other side of it too is like, not having that experience, not having that firm grasp on the rules. So like, where's that line? Where can somebody say, okay, yeah, I think I'm ready and I should be confident enough to do this? Because that was the thing in the back of my head, is like, I'm not ready to do this.
Then you aren't ready to do this. As soon as you get rid of the voice in the back of your head that says, I'm not ready to do this, you're potentially ready to do this. And then once you get into how much work it goes into actually DMing, like not on, like, even if you don't make voices, even if you just run modules, even like you're organizing a weekly event that happens. First, I don't have to tell you how hard that can be.
Yeah.
You working in a kitchen. So that's number one. Like that's the hardest part about being a dungeon master, is when it goes, nope, I can't make it this week. Do we still play, or do we just miss a week? Wow. And then like it's really just all about you wanting to DM, getting those sessions out of it, and then finally deciding whether you want to continue being a dungeon master or if you want to continue being a player. And as Thundercat would like me to do, his first DM game, if I remember correctly, was Fandelver. Am I not wrong? You correct me in the chat, because that's one of my first memories. And it was me, Vandal, Thundercat. I don't remember if there was anybody else there, and there was a Kyle from Montana. I think that was his name. But we trounced through the first little boss area, killed the wizard with one hit because crits are crits, and rolled max damage, gave Vandal. And then I think there was the necromancer encounter. Like he shut down Kyle and he got mad, and like this is what he can do. Like it's done. Being a first time dungeon master is like riding a bike. You're gonna fall down, you're gonna get scrapes and bruises. Like it comes with the territory. It's learned by doing. It's one of the hardest ways to learn how to do something, is by doing it.
Right.
It's like he knew half. He says he doesn't know the rules. He knew about half the rules. He knew about the player's side. And then when you get into how much like balance it goes for magical weapons and like the encounters, and then the action economy, and then you go into older editions with like Thaco and all that crazy shit. Like dungeon mastering is work. It's putting effort into a weekly event that you drive. You potentially create a story that could not even be scratched the surface of, because you made a funny NPC in a store that the people liked, and then you had to build a story around that on the fly, because that's what people wanted to do. But you had fun for the 3.5 hours you talked like this for. I found I lost this sack of gold. I don't know where I lost it, but I remember I was walking through the mines, and then all of a sudden I wasn't in the mines no more, and then I was in a forest. In this forest there was these birds. They were colorful birds. They weren't blue. They weren't green. They were red. They were these red-breasted birds. Yeah, shortly after the mine, and that's where I lost the gold. Like, that's the wonderful thing about DMing, is like, even though you wrote 3 hours about something that wasn't even touched, you did something that was completely improvised for 3.5 hours that people didn't even realize where it was improvised. That's the thing to remember about it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
As your friend, DD, I would love to play in a game that you would dungeon master. As a fellow content creator, keep that game away from the internet. So the internet can't roast you, and you forget about these rules, and you can't do this, and you can't do that.
See, that's the thing about what we do as content creators.
I understand that sometimes, yes, it's nice to look at a car fire, but sometimes you don't want to be the one that lights the match, okay? Like, that's the thing. You don't want to take care of it.
I feel like all we do here is light matches. At least that's Sal. That's Sal's job. All he does is press buttons and light matches. Gotta literally roll with the punches. Yeah.
That's the hardest part about DMing. Like, it's knowing when to say yes and when to say no.
Right. Yeah. And well, and one of the things that worried me about doing that one shot was I had an idea for how to railroad the party into a separate area that would not affect the story whatsoever. And
was it a dream?
No. It was and I don't want to bring it up in case, like, for some reason we're not able to do if we're not able to do an actual War for Garaxia session on the 13th when we're supposed to come back, then I'm keeping this in my pocket, but it only works for this session where we're at in the story. So
as a dungeon master, if you're trying to railroad the party, first of all, you're not going to railroad the party. Don't ever try to railroad the party, because they'll railroad themselves. If you're trying to railroad the party, do it while they're sleeping, because then they have no choice. You can do anything you want with the world, so it doesn't have to make sense.
Right. Well, I had considered that, but the unique part about this story is, like, we're mid-sentence when we ended the session, basically. Like a helicopter or an airship just landed right in front of us with scouts on it that we're supposed to be talking to. So, like, trying to find a way to interject that and then come back at that exact same moment in time was unique, but I figured something out that would work, basically. And also taking a character out of play in the same like narrative. So
I'm curious to see how it would work.
Yeah. If we end up, I'll talk about it if we end up doing our regular session on Friday. But Dara.
Hot damn.
Dara in rating with a party of 7 and flexing his points. Thank you so much, Dara, for coming in here and bringing your community over here.
Dara, party of 7. Dara, party of 7.
Your tabletop is now ready.
Your tabletop is now ready.
It's past everyone's bedtime. I feel you. It's late over there. Well, we are good. We are talking D&D right now, from a new player's perspective.
Thundercat's on vacation.
Yes, Thundercat is on vacation. I got this queued up. There he is. He's at Disney World right now, so I am
turkey leg
in
Streamlabs is broken.
Streamlabs is broken? Oh, wait, are there...
Yeah, it's okay. I shouted at Dara and it hates me. Anyway.
Oh.
I forgot what we were talking about. You were talking about something.
We were talking about my one-shot idea, but we needed to segue anyway. So segue. How do you feel is the best way to kind of balance combat and role play? And, like, I guess as a player, how do you feel about combat and role play, and which do you prefer? Do you like a good balance of them? Would you rather just do role play? Like, I've had conversations with people that like would like to do a no combat campaign, which sounds awful to me, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, first of all, because everyone, we've talked about this on the podcast before. What are your thoughts on role play versus combat? I want to know your thoughts now.
My thoughts?
Your thoughts.
I think it should be balanced. I think there should be a little bit of both. Like, I think you have to balance the combat so that it fits where you definitely have to balance it so that it fits where the party's at the time. So you're not just immediately killing everyone off, and it's not like excessively difficult. But add it to break up the role play a little bit, because I like, for instance, with the Saturday night campaign that we're doing, if we're in a situation where we're taking too long to make a decision, our DM is very helpful at helping us make a decision by making us roll for initiative, because we took too long to decide while we were in the middle of a forest near goblins.
As it should be. As it
Yeah,
should be.
I mean, as it should be. I feel like that's a good way to keep the story moving, so that it doesn't get too excessive. But I feel like you can get too bogged down almost in the role play aspect of it, and then bringing in the combat to kind of force things along. But also it adds another dynamic to the game where you're using your player mechanics, and you get to roll the dice, which can be infuriating sometimes, but it's also this crazy dopamine boost when you get a natural 20. Like, so I mean, there's pros and cons to it, so I feel like it does need to be balanced. But where's that line? How do you balance that?
So you're talking to someone who I will be the first person to tell you that I don't like combat. I'm not a big fan of combat. I could do, you said a no combat campaign. Actually sounds kind of interesting to me. However, there's one thing that I do like about combat is when you have that combat that's fucking memorable. Like, I know that you're always gonna remember until we have something cooler come along. That fucking fight in the forest where you hung out by the pit traps and nothing went by them. Because it was. Do you remember that combat, though?
I do remember that. I almost died.
That was a very hard combat.
Yeah,
it was a memorable combat.
It was difficult. It was memorable. Like, I thought it was well thought out. Like, and I do think it was balanced. It was a great way for me, never playing a paladin before, to learn how to paladin. Like, it was the second session, right? It was the
Have
second
you learned
session.
how to paladin, though?
No,
Have you
I
learned?
haven't.
Okay, all right.
But
all right,
learning some of the basic mechanics,
yes,
and what not to do as a paladin, definitely took all the missteps in that fight for me.
I like how Dara says it because he's got no D&D experience. In my opinion, that no one asked for. We kind of do because we do this on a live thing, so we're subject to the audience. Is the combat is cool, but I love the whole roleplay element of D&D. But I'm just a sucker for roleplay stuff. I'm a sucker for roleplay because you're getting into a character that's you're developing in front of other people. You're watching this character grow, but the combat can be cool. DD has not gone through the garbage combats, the random encounter combats, you've been traveling through a dungeon for X amount of minutes. I now have to roll dice to see if you get into a combat,
Right.
and then roll more dice. Those combats suck. Those combats bog down me developing my character, where I can still develop that character in the big fight at the end of the dungeon or throughout the traps throughout the dungeon, where it's not really a combat, but it's a character life-threatening event. Like, I don't know if have you been in a skills challenge yet? A proper one?
No, I don't think I have. No.
So I think Thundercat did it first, and we did it in the Horde of the Dragon Queen module. You had us roll for initiative, and then you look at your skills to see how you can use them. And we were all in this big cult of the Dragon Queen gathering, and it's all split up. So, like, one person's trying to persuade people to get them to tell them, like, where are some prisoners, where are some information of things they are. Like, And then I'm like, can I try to use an animal handling check to see if I can cause a distraction with the penned up animals to get them, so we can get out? Like, that is where you have kind of the same combat things, but not the same combat, like the slag of a combat. Like
Right.
if you have me and 4 brand new D&D players, the 4 brand new D&D players are going to take a lot longer in that combat to remember everything they do. Where I go, all right, I'm going to move up here. I'm going to do this action, this bonus action. I don't have a reaction I can use on my turn, so that is my turn, and belong. It's that learning curve. It's knowing when to throw in combat to make newer players remember the combat elements, so the smaller combat goes quickly, so then it's not a slag in the future. That's my problems and groans that I have with combat in general.
Right. Yeah, and I get that. It can, yeah, and I can definitely see how it can turn into like you said, it can just slag on. Like it can really slow down things and almost unnecessarily um yeah, you I feel like you could very easily accidentally kill a player um just by throwing combat after combat at them and not paying attention to like where they're at. Um but I don't know. I feel like there does have to be a balance, and I kind of like what Dara said, that like 65-35 ratio. Like I
Role play to character development to combat.
yeah, yeah. Like I would love to see a combat maybe every other session. And the occasional session where you've got multiple combats in a single session.
It
But
depends.
that's also just me wanting to roll the dice a little bit more.
I mean, you can still roll dice without having to roll dice, Like you can I go out and try and, get some small game? Sure, go out and make a survival check. There you're rolling dice and you're not having to get into combat.
Right.
Should you roll a 1 and then, shoot an arrow at a bear and then have a bear charge you, you're probably going to get into that combat that you want. But like 65-35, and I like the intense combat, like the memorable combat. And then Hunter's Lantern, combat is nice, but it sucks when it's combat session after session, and sometimes you need that role play.
Right.
So like
right.
I've run big dungeons, and there's like rooms and rooms that have resource draining combats. And what you do is you have the role play break when you short rest. Because then you lock those fucking doors, things can't get in that you know of. And then you can kind of be like, all right, how are we going to get out of here? And then talk it out in character.
Right. Yeah. Dara, you can certainly try.
Yep. Can I try to roll a 20 to hide the bear the nearest? It's a trained bear. All you would have to pay is a gold. You'll be fine. And then you'll get to the pub. It'll probably be a gouge on the prices on beer. But yeah, like balancing combat and role play, like it's a delicate line. It also depends on what your player's like. Like if you have an evil campaign that's a bunch of murder hobo players, you're probably going to have a lot of combat. If you have like a lot of like role play heavy characters, you might have a combatless D&D game. But I'll say this right now, even though I love the idea of that combatless D&D, all of the skills, there are combat skills. There's a reason why there are combat skills. It's because there will be fights. There should be fights.
Right.
There should be there should be ways to show the teamwork in a combat situation, in a heist situation that you could do as a skills challenge and not have to do combat should they not get 2 or 3 failures and then they have to fight the guards on their way out.
Right. Well, so I'll go back to Critical Role because like those guys are one of the things that have made me so passionate about D&D. Like I came into it, immediately loved it from session one. I immediately loved D&D, but like watching those guys since I started playing has really given me just like a deep love for this game. But some of the most memorable moments throughout their campaign are the combats. So like you mentioned earlier, those memorable combats. Like
Some of
those
them, yes.
some of them. Some of them. Not all of them, but some of them. So like
Okay.
those combats that really I think in themselves define the heroes of the campaign, right?
Um, yes and no. Because I mean, if we're gonna go to Critical Role, I'll be the devil's advocate here because I'll say that a lot of the memorable moments from Critical Role are not um they're not combat for me. They're things that have happened either due to combat. Like, how much of the first season of Critical Role have you seen? All of it?
And no, I'm a quarter of the way through it right now, so I can't. I got a ways to go. I got a ways to go. So for me, so far, and I hit my chair wrong. Hold on, there we go.
Well, so when a certain dragon conclave attacks, and then when they're fighting a certain dragon, one of them dies in the fight. They get resurrected, but the way that this character role plays it after being brought back from the dead is like one of my favorite moments in like all of Critical Role. Then on the other hand, you have Grog pulling a card out of the deck of many things and having his soul sucked into the abyssal, like having it sucked into the howling plains of madness towards the end of the campaign, which turned it into its own one shot. And that was out of combat. Like, there are so many funny moments out of combat. It's a good blend because you'll always have memorable moments from any campaign. It just depends on where that moment was. Like that natural 20 to slay the dragon, the natural 20 on your perception check to see the person floating out 600 feet in the water, and you got a 31, which is mathematically so fucking lucky.
Right.
You still
Right.
managed to do it.
Yeah. And so I think that comes back to the game and the fact that it is a game and that there are different ways to kind of play the game.
Mm-hmm.
And different people are going to enjoy different aspects of the game. And when it comes down to it, your job as a player is basically two things, right? Have fun and make sure everybody else can have fun too.
Yeah. So I'm gonna get back to something you said. I don't want to say that this Dungeons and Dragons is a little more than a game to me. It's a shared storytelling experience between potentially people you don't have no idea how their brain operates, how they tell stories, or people you've grown, you've grown to be friends with, and you're sharing an experience where you're trying to tell a cooperative story with someone who's written the bare bones of an epic adventure that you're trying to help fill the pieces on. Like, the only thing that makes it a game is like the math and the mechanics. That's
Right.
really what make it like a board game, quote
Right.
unquote.
And then the rest is storytelling. Yeah.
The rest is storytelling and acting, really, in a very, very, very dry sense of the word. You're being a character. You're potentially having different flaws and views and bonds and ideals that you may share than something that you play for 2 hours.
Hey, listen, there's nothing dry about Cougar's character, okay?
See, And that's something that I would give to new players. Like if you're having a hard time role playing, be an extension of yourself. Turn yourself up to 11. Be just you. And then it should be kind of easier to think how you would think or make a decision based off of like how you would react. That's the hardest thing I had as a new player is trying to react to things in a different brain set of Patch the overthinker. Now, Ironhide the underthinker, like all right, well, I'm just gonna go ahead and walk on up these stairs and see what Sal is up to and not really pay attention to where I'm standing anymore, which going forward, we're gonna do a lot more of in the future.
Pressing buttons. Yeah. Well, and for Sal in particular, the first character that I made, for me it was like creating that character was okay, let me pick an alignment first. And then how do I build a character around that alignment? And since then I built the character and the alignment shifted. So
see, I typically get my alignment from my ideal. So that'll give me like good or like neutral or chaotic. Right. Typically what the first thing I do when I make a character is I pick I do the standard way to make things is I go race because you were born into being that race. That's where you start. Uh, what did you do before becoming adventurer? So that's your background. What I am as an adventurer. But with that background comes your ideals and your flaws and all that shit. Right. The flaw is typically the first thing I pick because that'll be the fun thing to work around. Like a wizard I played for a hot minute used to speak with very elongated syllabic tones, and his syllabus was top of his diction. And if you didn't understand that, I like to use big words to make people feel dumb. See, kind of made you feel a little dumb after I got towards the end of that. So yeah, like that was fun to do. And Baron Deer, I wasn't supposed to talk. I was supposed to grunt, which you can imagine, DD, was very hard for me to do for the first 4 weeks of that campaign.
I'm sure it was.
There's a lot of grunting.
Did he eventually learn to turn the grunts into talking? Or
I got a face tattoo. Yeah, I embrace talking pretty easily. Me and Talionix, the female rogue, I gave her a good old apple slapping. For those of if you don't understand that, Google it. Yeah, I mean, Prince Puma was lawful good, so I didn't like do bad things, and I also wouldn't stand for if people were to break their law around me, and then perhaps let the authorities know should they broken the law around me that they were guilty of such things. And no, it was not fun for the other players. And then there was Gad, who was completely impulsive and would make up plans. Even though we would have other plans, I had a plan that didn't matter about their plans because I'm big brain and they're dumb brain. I'm smart, you're dumb. Doesn't matter. And that was the one thing that I would always might tell when I thought their plan was stupid is that I would like sniff. Like, okay. And I would do something
totally
rash.
different. Yeah.
Yep. Like, disintegrate half a building. But then again, I was a 15th level wizard. You're given a set of tools that you can use, you kind of figure out what they do at that point.
Right. Yeah. I mean, by 15th level, you've got a pretty good idea of how your character works.
And you've also got a pretty decent arsenal of higher level spells that do some damage.
Yeah. Okay. So we are running out of time. So I guess let's any final notes? You
A
got
long
any?
episode.
Yeah. Have you got any like final things you want to say to like new players coming into D&D? What's one thing you would tell a new player before they started playing D&D?
Learn how combat works. Learn your movements, your actions, your bonus actions, and your reactions, and then roleplay shouldn't be as hard to learn at that point.
Right. On that note, I have seen a couple of dungeon masters that have talked about they like running a combat immediately in session 0. Like it's you're setting up the environment, and then first thing you do is roll for initiative, because it gives you the opportunity for those new players to learn those mechanics right off the bat, and then you can go directly into role play after that. But
see, here's the thing though, DD. That allows people to roll dice in a combat situation. When you put people with HP, and then you put the dice into a DM's hand, if I critically hit, I'm behind a screen and you don't know what I rolled, so I can go, oh, well, that was a 3.
Yeah, but there are also ways to get around that. Like if it's the very start of your campaign, then you can write it in as a training simulation. I mean, it's
You could.
it's a vision that you received ahead of time. There's ways around that. I mean, and as a DM, that's just part of the telling the story, writing the story at that
Yeah.
point. So
That if you want to give your players plot armor real quick,
you could TPK them in the first 5 minutes and still write around that. I mean,
if you're level 1 and you're running a challenging encounter, you will probably TPK them.
yeah.
You have to remember that when you go into combat, the mechanics are completely like that is when they're bam. That's how it works. You can write around your dream sequences, but when they're dead, they're dead. Then they're out of combat, and then they're doing other things that aren't D&D, which might not be fun. That's the thing to remember too. When you kill like I like to kill a whole party all in one go with a fire breath or an acid spit. One dude, this might take a minute.
So I talk about that another time. Never mind. Yeah, we need to wrap up. Cool.
Do we?
Eh. Eh. Eh.
Pay attention. First thing as a new player. Absolutely,
yes.
Thundercats. Very good. Very good set of 2 words.
Yes. I have caught myself at times not paying 100% attention because I'm trying to like either plan my next move or figure out something else that we're doing, and I miss like a critical detail. And it'll bite you. It'll bite you in the ass later on.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, new players. I'm still a new player. And I have absolutely loved every minute of this D&D thing.
Hold on.
What?
Wait a minute.
What?
I have to do something now.
Okay.
Sir Dysfunctional Dad, I will take your new player title and put it up on the shelf. You are now a seasoned player. I dub thee Sir DD, a seasoned D&D player.
For half a season, so.
You've had some pretty challenging combats. You're running a rogue. You have a party of more than 3 people. And you're also playing D&D with a kind of a new DM. So that you're seasoned. That is you've played a bunch of D&D, and now you're starting to fill out your bingo checklist. You don't have D&D bingo yet.
No,
you haven't
not yet.
died.
Not yet.
Yep, not yet.
Only a matter of time for Sal. Let's be honest.
Not wrong.
Yeah, not wrong. Yeah. Well, okay. It's seasons maybe a stretch, but I'll take it. I'm not brand new anymore. I've learned a few things. Since I started playing. You can too. Get in, do it. Find a group. There's all kinds of ways to find people to play with. If you're looking for people to play with, join our Discord.
!Discord!
Yes, that right there. Yep. And then is that Streamlabs isn't doing its thing, is it? Streamlabs not.
Well, so since Streamlabs can suck a big old fat one tonight, if you notice right below our About Dysfunctional Gaming TTV, there's a link tree, and it'll bring you to this white page with green buttons. Go click some buttons. There's one that says Discord, and there's Dysfunctional Talking D&D podcast. Hey, look, guess what? Now I've got Twitchception. I've got me talking in my ears, and I don't like it.
Did we unmod Streamlabs?
Maybe.
It's plausible.
All right. Try modding slobs.
Yeah.
Well, you know what?
Yeah.
Nope.
Well, we're at the end of the stream at this point. So let's
Oh, wait! You're here! DD, fix it!
Fix what?
Streamlabs, mod it now. You're here. I can yell at you while I'm here because the clip thing didn't work for the longest time, and I can yell at you. I was like, Daddy, fix it. Daddy, fix Streamlabs. How does that work? How do I do it?
We'll fix it. We'll fix it in a minute. I gotta log into Streamlabs. I'm not doing that when we're
mod.
Oh, that'll work.
Streamlabs.
Is that?
I don't have permission to perform that action.
What? Are you not modded?
Am I not modded? What? I have a little sword. I just did.
Oh yeah, you're modded.
Well, anyway, it's broken. Mods can't add mods. All right. Well, thanks, DD. Thanks. We try to learn how to stream.
It's just Streamlabs, right?
Sure.
Streamlabs is already a moderator of this channel, so.
Well, it's broken. You need to sign into it on your. So anyway, fuck Streamlabs. What were we talking about before we were derailed like the monorail?
Final notes for new players.
Pay attention.
Pay attention.
Bring dice.
Yes, not just one.
No combat,
but a set.
No, bring one to see what
combat's
happens.
Okay.
Combat's okay. Just know it.
Yeah, know it. Yeah, no. Oh no. Yeah. K. No.
But know it. No. Yeah. K. Yeah. Know how combat works. Motherfucker. What did you think I was saying?
I heard no combat is in like not any combat.
No.
Like that's not what we said. Okay. Pay attention, get good, don't eat the die, bring snacks, don't be a prick. If you're late, bring snacks. That's a rule. I don't know if it's written anywhere, but it should be.
First of all, if you're playing D&D, you should bring snacks to share. That's a rule in D&D. That is a rule. It's in the books. Someone needs to bring snacks so the dungeon master doesn't murder you. And if he murders you, you have something to eat and, sob your fucking tears into.
Pizza is snack, Star.
Yes, pizza is snack. Pizza is snack.
Pizza.
Undo, not snack.
All right. Cool. So, what do we got going on the rest of the week?
How about are we not doing the D&D minute? Because I have a D&D minute.
Oh, you have a D&D minute?
I never.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Spoil it.
Let's do it. What's the D&D minute?
So,
what you got?
So, due to the popular demand of cast, prepare, and erase.
God damn you.
I'm not doing that, so we're doing something different. We're gonna get vocal.
Okay.
We're gonna get verbal.
Ooh.
I'm gonna read off a cantrip. So this is a little bit of a word association game. I'm gonna say the cantrip. You're gonna say the verbal part that your whatever can cast this would say.
Okay.
I'm going to read 3 of them. I'm going to tell you what they require.
Okay.
If they require more than vocal, you have to give me what you would do with your hands.
Okay.
All right. The first one. is gust. It is verbal and somatic. Somatic means you have to move your hands. Do you know what gust does?
It's wind, right? Like, read the spell to me. Read the spell to me.
You seize the air and compel it to create one of the following effects at a point you can see within range, which is 30 feet. One medium or smaller creature that you choose must succeed on a strength save or be pushed 5 feet away from you. You create a small blast of air capable of moving one object that is neither held nor carried that weighs no more than 5 pounds, pushed up to 10 feet away from you. You create a harmless sensory effect using air, such as leaves to rustle, wind to slam, shutters closed, or your clothing to ripple in a breeze. So verbal and somatic, what would you do?
Blow me.
Okay. All right. Next one. We are going to move on to prestidigitation. I know you know what this one does. It's verbal and somatic. What would DD the wizard do?
All right, so is it so you would have to have like, so it's somatic, so there would have to be a hand motion with it, right? Okay.
Yeah, you'd have.
I know what Sal does. I know what Sal does for that sort
Abracadabra.
of thing. Abracadabra. It's different inflection on different ones, but
right.
And I haven't pulled out the Alakazam yet. That's the big one. So prestidigitation. Watch this.
Okay. Okay. I like it. And now we're gonna go for the last one. Let's pick a good one. This one is only verbal. This one is vicious mockery.
Ah, yes. I think that depends on the situation. It's very situational.
Okay. The situation that you are facing, DD the Bard, you are facing a skeletal troupe of drum players as they proceed down the street and play on their drums as they begin to on their rib cages.
Hey, anybody teach you rhythm, or did you lose that? No bulimia jokes. No. Yeah. Insult the rhythm. Probably.
I like it. So, Dara, it was vicious mockery to you. What you do is you hurl a string of insults laced with subtle enchantments at a creature you can see within range. If the target can hear you, doesn't need to understand you, it must make a wisdom save or take psychic damage and have disadvantage on its next attack. But no. I like that little game.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's good.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. You got anything else?
No, that was the D&D minute. What are we doing on Friday, DD?
Friday, we're playing Tiny Tina's. You and me are at very least.
Tiny Tina!
If we can get potentially Vandal and or Disto in there too, we will. But I know for a fact you and I are.
Absolutely. Yes.
So that's gonna be fun. I haven't made any progress with it. I've kind of been taking a break from it for a little bit, so I need to play it and get on your level, I guess.
I mean, you're hosting the game, so I mean, you set the pace, and you also I can literally take my little baby character, and then you can be like big nurse DD.
Oh, I can be.
Yeah, you can be big dick swinging if you really want.
It's not that big.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I mean, it's gonna be fun either way. So check that out Friday night. What time are we shooting for? 9:30, 10 o'clock, right around there.
9:30, realistically, because I'll be out of work at that point.
Yeah. Okay.
10 o'clock, I will certainly be out of work at that point.
Okay. So somewhere in that time frame, around the same time that we would be going on for our War for Varaxia, which we again, are not going to have this weekend. We're also not having Fight for the Forest. That is going to start back on Friday the 13th. So catch us on Friday the 13th for the next episode of War for Galaxia. Next Tuesday the 10th, Thundercat will be back, so you can get your normal host and get my new bass out of here.
Wait. You stop your. I see you have an outro pick, and I want to screw up your rhythm. Thundercat will be back from what? Thundercat's on vacation right now.
Yeah,
right?
He's gonna be back from Disney World. By next Tuesday. So hopefully he'll finish that turkey leg by then.
He's drinking around the world today. Tomorrow I don't know what he's
doing. He better make a vlog out of that. That's all I'm saying.
Literally all he has to do is just take a beer and just take a sip of it and go,
yeah, just do that every at every stop and edit it into a compilation.
Now I know what I'm gonna do when I go to Disney World.
Yeah, right. That's we've also got some new videos coming out this week on our YouTube channel, Dysfunctional DND. You see the logo just below us here. Look for that.
You know what the
logo.
best part about Dysfunctional D&D? It's not D and D, it's DND. I can do that. Like,
you don't have to use the ampersand.
DND.
Yeah, you don't have to use an ampersand.
DND.
Yeah, you don't have to use the ampersand.
Fuck Streamlabs.
You don't have to press shift at any point during typing this in.
All right, so DD, I have to let you know right now, if you plan to keep on streaming, you should certainly invest yourself into Streambot. So then you don't have to rely on fucking Streamlabs because it sucks.
Well, I've got a desktop Streambot.
Hey, look at that.
It's Streamlabs, but it's the desktop chatbot, which is much more reliable than the cloudbot.
Yeah, because it's running on your desktop.
Yeah, exactly,
and not dependent on the internet.
And yeah, typically I do run that when I'm doing my own stream, but I also have not streamed since like November, yeah. So I'll get back to that eventually, but for right now, just kind of working on some things. Yeah. So no, next week on Tuesday. Yeah, you're talking about Warlock subclasses. Is that right?
Yeah, we are slogging our way through the subclasses, and out of the ones that are left, I figured, since Thundercat is on vacation, that we would then tackle the next longest one. As you can see, with Thundercat eating his turkey leg, his eldritch patron is a mouse in the land of Disney. His weapon, he has the Pact of the Weapon as opposed to the Tome. And yeah, so we're going to talk about Warlock subclasses. It's going to be weird because I don't know how it breaks down. It breaks down into like, you pick your god, you pick your weapon, and then you pick your eldritch invocations. It's like 3 different subclass things in one episode. Yay!
Yeah, well, that will be super interesting. I'm sure for a lot of people, even if it's not right up your alley.
I don't even care if it's not up your alley. You listen to it and then you comment about how much it sucked. Hit the dislike button. Do it.
Don't hit the... Stop. Got enough of that already. Head over to our YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. Don't dislike. Can if you want to. I'm not gonna tell you what to do. But
hit the like button.
I am going to tell you
comment that you meant to hit the other button.
I am going to tell you to comment and subscribe because do that. But yeah, where are we heading? What's up? What's next? You got any thoughts on the subject?
What subject? Where we're gonna go to?
Yeah, where are we raiding to?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me take a peek here. You like baseball.
I do like baseball.
We're gonna go see the show noob.
The show noob?
Yeah, he's a lovely streamer who likes Star Wars. That's how I kind of first like hung around, because he has a little you go to the temple where you get to be a Jedi Council if you subscribe. But he's a very, very friendly person,
Okay.
as most baseball streamers are.
Cool.
I have to continue typing. Thank you for the raid, Dara.
Yeah, thanks so much for
We
bringing your
appreciate
community
it.
by here. Absolutely.
I don't know how to type in a chat.
Yeah, and thanks everybody
Shoo.
for being here tonight. Thanks for hanging out and watching me stumble my way through this podcast. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, Patch. Thanks for
No problem.
letting me
Thanks for continuing the stream. So now we're at 62, and next week will be 63, as opposed to this week coming up being 62. It was weird to not be Thundercat, which I enjoyed. I do it on a daily basis, but now it was nice to be in Thundercat's seat and not be Thundercat. I don't know. I kind of trailed on towards the end of that.
I get what you were going for there. I think maybe.
Bye, Thundercat. Enjoy your vacation. Where are you going tomorrow? I want you tell me where you're going tomorrow, or show me where you're going tomorrow. Text me in the middle of the day and send me your moonshine drinks. We're gonna go say hello to the show noob playing some baseball. I think he's grinding some battle royale. But he's gonna ask us who our favorite team is, so make sure you know a little bit about baseball to say a team if you don't have a favorite team.
Just say the Cardinals. That's it.
Yes. Yeah, say the Cardinals. You'll be okay with that one. Say the Braves. He's a Braves fan. I'll set you up for that one.
There you go. All right. Thanks everybody for being here. We still got some time. All right.
We got some time on the clock. But we got DD Jams. He's dancing, doing stuff. It's kind of hard to do the Randy thing. When you got DD doing Stevie Wonder, boy, you got some jams for him. Yeah. He's going to Animal Kingdom tomorrow.